Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about the connection between our IRL world and the fantasy world, and why the need for that to be much more, for that connection to be stronger than ever is applicable for our times, all right? And, okay, so there's spoiler warnings here. There are spoilers for Season 4 of Succession in this content. All right, let's go. All right, so guess what happened just yesterday? Very, very interesting. So I watched Succession. Really fascinating show. Legit. It's a show about conference calls, right? Like it's a show about business, right? Very slim audience. Very few people are going to be interested in this thing. You got to be deep in the weeds and understand global finance to have any interest in this show. And you really need to be interested in the interconnections between finance, between the media, and have an interest in discussions of varied wealth classes and friction between varied wealth classes, right? Very interesting show, right? I really enjoy it. So I've been watching it since the beginning, and I'm moving along on Season 4, right? So guess what happened this Sunday? Logan Roy died, all right? So the main, the father, right? The main father figure of the Roy family, right? His son Kendall, and his youngest son Roman, and I'm forgetting the daughter's name. Sorry. His daughter, the red hair daughter, she's in the mix too, and basically the question is who is going to take over for him. Now, one of the things that became when he steps down, and what became very clear in seasons 1 through 3, and actually what became clear specifically in season 3, is that he would never step down. Period. End of sentence. Right? And he always gave these and that all of his I think one of the things that was interesting was all of his gestures that he would be stepping down and handing over to Kendall or to Roman or his red hair daughter. Oh, what is her name? I cannot. Yeah, sorry. They were all gestures, right? None of them were sincere, and he was never going to step down. And the reason why was he's a complete control maniac, control freak, right? And he was never going to give a bit of control to anyone but himself, right? And what's even wilder is not only did he absolutely refuse to relinquish any control, he didn't have any plan for succession, because even talking about his succession meant that he was out of control, which was that he was not in control. And that's kind of the same thing of being out of control, right? And he just wanted 100% control. And I find this extremely fascinating, because in my humble opinion, this is a major problem. And I think this is why so here's the thing. Most people do not watch Succession. The smartest people in the world do watch Succession, right? And the reason why is it's a perfect mirror for our real world, right? And the reality is we've just seen time and time again that there's no succession plan anywhere. We have an 80-year-old president in America. That is bonkers, right? We just watched Bernie Sanders legit have a heart attack, just running for president. The idea that we are habitually going for octogenarians and septuagenarians for U.S. president is outrageously outlandish, foolish, and goes against every bit of science you could ever possibly collect, right? It's ridiculous. It is an absurdity. And the reason why is everywhere you look, old people are clutching tooth and claw to power, and they will not let go. Apple, right? I don't think Apple has created a single useful thing since Jobs died, right? And I think he handed it over to Tim Cook, I think, right? And and the reality is, Jobs is gone. There's nothing coming out of that place that is really innovative, unique, or new, or fresh, or valuable, in my humble opinion. But the name is incredibly valuable, right? And there was just no succession plan. He literally had cancer, and he just refused to let go and really give a good transition to the next person, and really build in a way that they could actually innovate. Where's my bicycle? Or just something new and fresh and real, right? It was just bigger versions, smaller versions, different color versions of the stuff Steve Jobs built. There's not been a single bit of innovation since, right? And so I just think everywhere you look, you see these terrible vortexes of unwillingness to set up a succession plan, right? It's happening right now in Russia, right? Like, you can bet there's no succession plan for what happens when Vladimir Putin dies, and the reason why is he's a tin pot dictator. Like, he's just a horrible, horrible dictator, right? And there can be no discussion, right, of him being out of power, right? And he's certainly not building anybody up, right? He's just a monster human who's like in charge of Russia, period, right? But one thing we do know after a year of war in Ukraine is he is the leader that the Russian people chose and continue to choose every day. That's dark. That is incredibly dark. So this is a huge problem, right? Let's get to the interesting part here, okay? Where's this connected to D&D? I'll tell you right now, fantasy and IRL are mixing fast, right? And the reality is, it is a hard sell to get people interested in fantasy, right? And by and large, Harry Potter is really struggling. Lord of the Rings is massively struggling, right? And Dungeons and Dragons is struggling right now, right? You're like, hey, you want to hear this story about an elf and a dwarf and a human and there's a dragon in it? And people are like, nah, I ain't got time for that. I want something that's connected to real life, right? And here's the issue. This is what's happening, right? The people who create fantasy are like, okay, I hear you. Let's connect it to real life. And that's exactly what they're doing, all right? So here's what just happened. On Sunday night, the new Succession episode dropped, and Logan Roy died, okay? Very exciting for the show. Very exciting for the show, right? Really, really puts the show in an incredibly exciting narrative position, right? So, and it's a huge spoiler, right? And it's a huge event, right? On Monday, in our IRL real world, they ran an obituary in the LA Times for Logan Roy like he was real. Did you hear that? They ran an obituary for a man who was fictional, and they did it in a real newspaper, like it was real. They mixed the fiction world and the IRL world, right? And this is where it gets dangerous, and this is where it gets exciting, and this is what people want, right? And so let me just tick it off, right? Let's go tickety-boo right through, right? So first of all, Dungeons & Dragons has been doing this since 1983, right? In the early 80s, parents were like, oh no, my kid's going to get sucked into a game world and never escape, and they're going to just be casting spells, and maybe I'll lose them in a portal, or are they actually worshiping demons? I don't know. What is fantasy? What is reality? And Gary Gygax was, I see your fear. I raise you by giving you a 1983 cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon that assures you your kids will get trapped in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons. Literally, the beginning of the show is like, hey, look at these actual real Dungeons and Dragons players, and look at them get trapped in the actual D&D game, right? Let's mix that fantasy and mix the IRL. You could make this stuff up, right? So, and that has just been increasing ever since, right? Dungeons & Dragons is like, hey, just so you're aware, Magic the Gathering settings are connected officially to Dungeons & Dragons settings. Oh, hey, here's a Magic the Gathering card with Post Malone on it. Yes, he's a real person, right? Yeah. So, yes, Post Malone can quest with Drizzt Do'Urden, right? And Post Malone can bring over the canon Hot Pockets so that Drizzt Do'Urden can try a meatball Hot Pocket, right? They are continuing to mix the IRL and the fantasy, right? It is happening constantly, right? Super Mario Brothers movie, right? Begins in the IRL Brooklyn. ends in the IRL Brooklyn with Bowser, 60 feet tall, knocking over buildings in the middle of Brooklyn, right? And with Mario and his brother, 20 feet tall, fighting, for Peach in the middle of IRL Brooklyn, mixing the fantasy and the IRL, right? And it just keeps going. It is absolutely astounding how many, and on the Dungeons & Dragons side, it just keeps going. They're like, so Lego has this entire set, right? Which is called Lego City, right? And it is modeled after real life. It has police officers, it has EMTs, it has doctors, it has nurses, right? It has shipping containers, it has semi-trucks, right? It is like, it models directly the IRL world, right? Lego's like, hey, Dungeons & Dragons, can we get over there and make sure that every single one of our Lego sets will be clicked right into your official D&D Lego set, and that every single miniature we've ever made is going to be completely at scale and will serve as D&D miniatures and D&D terrain, right? And make sure that that Dungeons & Dragons characters can literally walk straight through to lots of fictional worlds and to Lego City, which models our IRL real world. And D&D was like, we got you. No, you guys never need to spend another day with your stupid sets sitting on a shelf. Everything you ever built is tools to write stories, tell stories, craft stories, right? It's incredible. It is absolutely astounding, right? And everywhere you look, people are like, and Brandon Sanderson's doing the same thing, man. He has this huge series, The Way of Kings, right? Oh, literally over 1,000 pages of fantasy worlds. And you'll find in book 2, 100011, recursor, back, real world, connection, right to the fantasy world. It's incredible. It is, and I'm telling you, basically, every fantasy intellectual property in the world, in my opinion, is hurtling to connect their world to the IRL as fast as they possibly can, so that they can be relevant to people who will not sit down for a story about elves and elves and dragons and dwarves and humans. And I don't even need to explain Harry Potter to you, right? That one was obvious. Harry Potter was like, yes, we have the elves, we have the dwarves, we have the dragon, right? And basically they're all in our world. We just don't see them, right? They hide themselves. It's astounding. It is truly astounding. And I am here for it. I am here for it, right? Are there any examples of this that I'm not seeing, right? I'm watching like a hawk for this stuff, right? And fantasy mixing with IRL just hit literally succession, right? And the whole world is up for this, right? We want to blend our IRL and our fantasy. And Dungeons and Dragons, and this is why I love this story and why I keep talking about this, because Dungeons and Dragons is legit farther ahead than anyone on this. They're decades ahead of the pack, right? They have done things to mix their worlds with the IRL and with other fantasy worlds at a level that has never been accomplished anywhere on any product, right? And just like I'm ahead of everything else on D&D, I'm on this first, right? And people are going to be starting to talk about this in the coming years, right? That Hot Pockets are canon to D&D, man. You just have to open your eyes, right? It's hard to understand, and it really frustrates me to see people who don't understand this, right? Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.